I've been studying creativity for more than 25 years. And to be asked to do one definition of creativity it would be really like asking a person to define life in one sentence. You can practice the ability to notice opportunities and to take them. And that's a highly effective skill.
What if you turn hardship into grace, anger into serenity? Everything changes. Make your life a masterpiece. Welcome, I'm Yannick, your host, and now joining me, Fredrik Haren. Fredrik Haren is a creativity explorer, really the creativity explorer in the world, and joins me now to really discuss his newly published book, The World of Creativity, a journey across 37 countries to discover the secrets of creative minds. Have you ever wondered what creativity is, why it really matters in your and others people's lives, and how to actually harness the power of creativity? If so, this episode is for you. Welcome, Fredrik Haren, to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you and to discuss your newly published book.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Let's dig into it.
But first, let's introduce yourself in simply one powerful sentence.
I am the creativity explorer. I think that's a very concise description.
It's beautiful. So let's just unpack first and foremost, before we go a little bit into your journey of growing up and why it came about that you started to explore what really creativity is across all the continents. Tell us a little bit about yourself and especially about creativity. Give us one precise definition of creativity in one sentence.
That is actually trickier than it sounds. I've been studying creativity for more than 25 years, and to be asked to do one definition of creativity it would be really like asking a person to define life in one sentence. It's just so many different aspects of life. How would you possibly define it that encompasses all of it? The more I study it, the more inclined I am to say that creativity is what makes us human. And I know that's a very big answer, but let me explain what I mean. First of all, humans is the most creative animal. So what differentiates us from other animals is that other animals are also creative, but we are by far way more creative than any other animal. So that is what makes us human, is that we are creative. But the other aspect of it is that we are never more human, we're never more alive, we're never more happy than when we are creative, except when we are in love. I mean, love beats everything. But second to love, the joy that comes from having a really good idea or seeing one of your ideas come true that means a lot to you is one of the happiest moments in our lives. And so you should ask yourself this question: if creativity makes us this happy, why are we not developing our creativity more? And that's what I'm all about. I want people to be more creative because it makes us happier. And as a bonus, it solves our problem, because creativity is problem solving. So we have less problems, which in itself also makes us happier or healthier or whatever problem we're solving.
Beautiful. So let's first dive a little bit into your childhood. When did you realize that, hey, that's actually a thing that you really want to study?
That's actually a good question, because I grew up in a family my mother was a teacher, my father was a musician. Now, if you take teacher and entertainer, you combine the two, you get professional speaker, which is what I ended up being. But as a child, I learned from my father that creativity is very important. As an entertainer, he played 10 different instruments, everything from the flute to the piano and guitar and all kinds of. So the problem is that I am not a musical person. My brother has perfect pitch, so he could just pick up an instrument and hear a song once and play it. I cannot do that. So I grew up in a family where creativity was very important, but I didn't know how to do it because I sucked at music. So for many years, I realized creativity is important and makes you happy, but I suck at it. It didn't take until I was in my mid-20s when I realized that, there's so many different kinds of creativity. You could be creative in any aspect, and no one is creative in all of them. So my creative expression became writing. And I wrote my first book when I was 27, and now the one I'm publishing now is my 11th book. And I decided, because I realized, in 2000, I decided I just want to study creativity. It's such an interesting topic. So for the last 25 years, that's what I've been doing.
But that's also very interesting, because you also at the very young age, you actually started a company, and so what made you have also the courage? And so how does this relate to creativity? Because I find this is very interesting.
Well, I did start a company, but I started it when I was, 27 or something, and we sold it when I was 32. How did I dare to do it? I was young. When you're young, you are braver. So I didn't know any better, and it was the internet times. You have to remember, this is the dot-com boom. Everything was possible. There was so much confidence. It was a wonderful, wonderful time, because no one knew how the internet was supposed to be used. So everyone just tried things out. So I said, okay, maybe we should start a company. And we did. So it was more the spirit of the time and the spirit of youth, I think, that made me start that company and sell it.
Well, that's very humble. I mean, everyone had the opportunity, right? But you did it. And what do you think was it that you actually had the confidence and the courage to actually do it? Like, besides the spirit and the thing, because you have something that you certainly in retrospect discovered that was basically a little bit what set you really apart. Because public speaking is something that does cause a lot of fear for many people.
Okay. But the company I started was an internet company, so that was totally different. The speaking aspect of it is explained by the fact that my father is a musician. So when I was 5 years old, he would bring me to his gigs, and he would put me and my brother up on the stage. And at 5 years old, we'd sing a song or two, and we get and old ladies would come up and give us a Coke as payment. So the idea of standing on a stage is natural to me from the beginning. That was not at that age. You don't question anything. So later in life, when I was asked to do speeches about the internet, there was no issue for me. I went up on the stage and did it. It doesn't mean I'm not nervous. I have done 2,000 speeches, more than 2,000 speeches, and I am still nervous when I go up on stage, a little bit, because you should be. If you're not nervous when you go up on stage, it means you don't care. The nervousness comes from caring. You want to succeed. The worst speeches I've ever done is when I wasn't nervous, because it meant I didn't care about this specific speech. So nervousness is actually good. You mentioned the word opportunity, that I took an opportunity. I'm a huge fan of etymology, and the word opportunity has the most beautiful etymological meaning. And if you want, I would like to share it with you.
Please, go ahead.
Yes, because what does opportunity mean? Opportunity is a name of a wind. There's like a typhoon, there's a storm, there's a breeze. There are different kinds of winds, and they all have a name. Opportunity in the olden days, like the Roman times, was a name of a specific wind. It means the wind that takes you back to your harbor, the wind that takes you home to your family. Literally, the wind that takes you back to your harbor is the meaning. So it means, in the Roman times, you were out on the Mediterranean Sea. There was no wind. You were starving. Everything was bad. And suddenly, here came opportunity, the right wind, the wind that will take you home. It shows two things. It shows that you need to realize when an opportunity comes, you need to realize, oh, it's that kind of a wind. You need to pick it up. And then you need to act on it. You need to hoist your sails. You need to get everyone on board and listen. Hey, listen, this is an opportunity coming. Let's put our sails up and let's go home to our families. So actually, you're right. One of my biggest strengths is that I'm good at noticing opportunities and I'm good at taking opportunities. They don't just come. They don't just, a wind that just comes and you don't react to it, it will be gone and then you're still stuck on the ocean wishing you were home. So that you can practice the ability to notice opportunities and to take them. And that's a highly effective skill.
How did you learn that? Walk us through.
Good, very good question. I think it's very much connected to improvisation because it's the difference between, it's not that having a plan is a bad thing, but opportunity doesn't come according to a plan. It just opened. I do the analogy sometimes with an elevator. So I'm just sitting waiting for the elevator to open, but you need to notice that the elevator is open, and when it does, it's open for 5 seconds. If you don't jump in then, you're going to miss it, right? So, and that means improvisation. When something happens and you feel, wait, there's something happening here, this could be a good thing, you just do it. And you can practice this when you have a feeling. When you have a feeling, oh, this could mean something, just drop what you're doing and do it. Even if that means, I don't know, you're in line at the passport control in an airport and you see, oh, they're opening another line. And, I wonder if they're going to open this. You can practice this by saying, you know what, I'm pretty sure they're going to open this. I'm going to change my line from where I am and go and queue first in this other line, hoping that maybe they open it. If they don't, you're going to be last in the other queue again. But probably they're going to open it. So I'm the kind of person who leaves the queue before they say, oh, there's another line open now. So you can practice this.
That is really brilliant because this really has also to do with, really testing out your limits in terms of your gut feeling, right? And then the more you practice it, like the more you can start trusting yourself and you really build the confidence that you need for really doing life. So let's dive into what really... Yeah.
Because you said gut feeling, and I interview a lot of people, and I recently interviewed the head of marketing of Samsung of Europe, and he talked about gut knowledge versus gut feeling. So gut feeling is a tricky thing because sometimes the gut feeling is wrong. Gut knowledge is a totally different thing. It means you're right. For example, if you stand in a casino and you have a gut feeling, it says, oh, I think it's going to be red, and you put all your markers on red. That is, you could call it gut feeling, but there's nothing, there's no facts or no data provided that it will be red. You just feel, it's a feeling you have. Gut knowledge is when you have so much knowledge about something, both conscious, but more importantly, subconscious, because you're an expert in something. So you have so much knowledge about something that you know that this is the right thing to do, but you don't know why. That is not a gut feeling, that is gut knowledge. And you need to be able to differentiate between gut feeling and gut knowledge. Gut knowledge, you should trust it every single time. Gut feeling is a lottery.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. And I think that also comes with experience and ultimately wisdom, because what you are doing essentially is really recognizing the patterns, right? You go simulating it through again, and somehow you match it, and if it matches, it might become knowledge. But that's a skill. That's not something that you just learn overnight. So why do some people think they are creative and others they feel like they are not?
I start my speeches by doing that. I start by asking the audience, do you think you are creative or not? And it's a way for me to gauge the audience about their creative confidence. But here's the truth. There is no connection between creative confidence and actual creativity. If I ask in America, do you think you are creative? Everyone says yes. If I ask in South Korea, do you think you are creative? Everyone says no. Or no one raises their hand, which is different. They might think so, but they might not raise their hand. But so Singapore, Japan, and South Korea, or all of the less than 20% will say yes in these countries. In America, 95% say yes. America is the most innovative country on the planet, but South Korea, Japan, and Singapore are also top 10. which means there's no correlation between creative confidence and actual creativity. Sweden is top 3, and we are about 60% saying yes. The only thing creative confidence shows is your level of confidence. It doesn't show your level of creativity. It also shows your humbleness. And the thing is, to be creative, you need to be confident and humble or doubt. I call it the creative sweet spot. You need to be confident that you can do something. Think about it like this. Everyone is going to the left, and you are going to go to the right. This is the definition of creativity, right? Everyone goes left, I go right. To do that, you have to be confident. But creative people, truly creative people, they think like this. Everyone is going to the left, I'm going to go to the right. Wait a minute, maybe right is wrong. Maybe I should go up, maybe down, maybe forward, maybe backwards. Because creative people are confident and also doubting themselves, constantly double checking themselves, questioning what they're doing. And when you are confident and doubting, I call it confidently doubting or doubtfully confident. That is the creative sweet spot. If you're too confident, you become cocky and arrogant, and that is very dangerous for creativity.
How do you apply all this knowledge that you have come across over the past 25 years in your day-to-day life? For example, let's walk us through a little bit what you do in the morning. Do you make a distinctions between having a routine and being in one way or another creative every single day in doing your routine in one way or another?
Well, I build my life around two things. Actually, I don't build it around creativity. I build it around joy and not stress. So my goal when I wake up is more than anything else. How do I make sure my day is not full of stress? And I don't have routines because a routine bore me. The opposite of joy to me is a routine. So I am very unroutine kind of a person. I'm very much a person who will go with the flow of what I feel like doing. For example, what have I done today? I drove my kids to school because then I get to spend another 20 minutes with them. Then I went to the gym for an hour. Then I played chess with my friend online because we play one game every day. Then I checked a few emails. And then I had lunch with my wife. And now it's 1:00. I'm doing a podcast. So I have hardly done any work at all today. But it's been a wonderful day. But and one more thing. I had a call with a potential client to do 10 speeches in India 2 months from now. And in that 15-minute talk, I was super focused on making sure I got that gig, which I think I did, which means 10 speeches booked for February in India. And that settles my months for that month, which is that's the idea of grasping an opportunity. The only time I needed to be very focused on making sure that I was focused on business was on that one phone call. And that got me 10 speaking gigs.
What does the family mean to you, especially your kids and your wife, in terms of you doing your life in a very particular and in a very creative way, in a very successful way? Because I think it's incredible when you can focus on joy and not being stressed, right? And most people don't have this luxury.
Well, it depends how you look at it. I saw a beautiful, I don't remember, I saw a beautiful description once of how much does it cost to buy a car. Basically, how many hours, everyone who thinks of buying a car should do this evaluation. How many hours do I need to work in order to get enough money and pay tax on that and then pay the car? How many hours is that? And then you calculate how much that is. And then you calculate how much hours do I save by having a car versus walking. And you might just realize that walking between different places is actually smarter for you than buying the car. That's an extreme example, but it's a way to think. So I'll give you an extreme example. When COVID hit, 2019, I was living in Singapore, and it was one of the countries in the world after China that realized quickly that we have a pandemic. So in March 2020, I sat down with my wife and I said, we said it's going to be 6 months to a year. So we were wrong on the timing. But basically, I said to her, there will be no conferences, no travel, which means there will be no business for a speaker at all. all our work will be virtual, and I hate virtual speaking. So I said to my wife, why don't we do this? We need a strategy for COVID, March 2020. And we said, what should be our strategy? And we said, when our children are asked by their children, how was it to be a child during the pandemic? Just like the flu of the 1918, right? When it was an historical event and our children look back on it, what will our children say? That will be our strategy. And we said our children are going to say, COVID was the happiest days of my childhood. That now we build a strategy around COVID like this. So what did we do? Both me and my wife stopped working. We pulled our kids out of school. We didn't have to, but we did, and we homeschooled our children. We lived in Singapore in the winter, and I have an island in Sweden, and we lived in Sweden in the summer, on an island, all alone, self-isolated on our own island, with our children, homeschooling our kids. And I am absolutely convinced, if you ask me, and I spend all my time with my children. I worked 1 or 2 hours per day. Now, the first reaction you can say is, that is beautiful. The second reaction you will say, oh, that easy for you because you could do it. But the way I said to my wife was, why should I retire at 65 and then have another 30 years where I don't work, where I'm all alone and it's just you and me and we're going to play golf or whatever we're going to do? Why don't I take a few of those years and use them now when the kids are young, so that I spend time with my children, which is the most important part of their life and my life. And then instead of retiring at 65, I will retire at 68, which means I am literally, if you look at life as a project, I will make exactly the same amount of money as someone who worked through COVID. The only reason is I call it pre-tire instead of retire. I took a 3-year break during COVID, and the bonus effect of this is that when COVID came out, I was super rested. I had a break. Basically, I had a life vacation. I took a 3-year break, and I'm super excited to go back to work. But if I hadn't had COVID, would I have been so excited to work another 20 years before retirement? Most people don't realize how stupid that is. I think 100 years from now, everyone will pre-tire when their kids are young. We will be children, we go to school, we go to university, we work for 10 years, we have 5 years off, and then we work again, and then we retire. That's the most logical way to live.
That's brilliant. But again, that really, it shows that you are very creative and really shows what you have done so far. And I think therefore it's so helpful to really read and study your work. But I'm just curious about you retiring, because you, to me, you seems to be a guy who will never fully retire because you truly love what you're doing. So to me, there is a dissonance.
And that's a good observation. I use the argument for the people who say, oh, it's easy for you to do because you could afford to do it. And I'm saying, no, if I would retire, I would just retire later. But you're absolutely right. I don't think I will retire at 68 either. Because first of all, I have a job that even if you're old, in most jobs after a certain age, it's hard to continue with the young people take over. In speaking and writing, there is no age discrimination. So old speakers are actually more in demand than young speakers. So, and authors who no one cares about the age of an author. So in that case, you can continue to do and also it's not hard on your body. So it's not like being, a plumber or something. At 65, it's hard to continue to work. But in my work, you can work at old age. And I do not plan to retire. The Indian president, after an old Indian president, when he was retired, he became a speaker, and he died on stage. That's my goal.
That's beautiful. I can really see that, and I think that's what we need to really have people, good examples who show us a path forward. Because I think what you are really showing us is to find, one's true purpose, and when you find your true purpose, you just continue, because I think we all have a true calling here on this very unique planet. So let's go back a little bit to really creativity. Do you think creativity is talent or is it a mindset?
Well, I guess it's both. It's kind of like music. Some people have perfect pitch, like my brother, and some people don't. But some people don't have perfect pitch. Like Mick Jagger is not very good at singing, but oh my God, he has passion for it and people love it. I love him. So does he have talent for singing? I don't know. He has talent for entertainment. So creativity is like this too. Or also like playing a ball sport. Some people have, I don't know, perfect pitch in handling a ball, and some people don't. And some people are messy, and some people are just very hardworking football players, and they have a talent for hard work. Creativity is more nuanced or more diverse in that, because there's so many different kinds of creativity. So you have talent in some of them, and in others you just have raw will. But creativity is very much inspired. As I said, my father was a musician, but also a music teacher. People would come to him and say, "How do I make sure my child grows up to become a musician?" And he said, you can teach any child to play an instrument. Hold your fingers like this, do this, and now they can play the guitar. But the only way to make them a musician, he said, is through inspiration. Play the greatest musicians for them. And if they are destined to be musicians, they will suck it up as sponges. Like Michael Jackson, he would look at Fred Astaire and Frank Sinatra. He would just study all the greats, and he became Michael Jackson. Play the greatest for your child, and if that doesn't stick, if that child is not sponging it up, that person will not become a musician. I mean, he might become technically someone who plays the guitar, but he won't become a musician. And I once interviewed a musician in Indonesia. He's very successful. And he said he's old, but he's 65. So his whole life has been spent on music. And I asked him, how do you define yourself? And he said, I define myself as a student of music, which I think is beautiful. Because that means he's just studying music anywhere, everywhere. And when you have that approach, to what you're doing, you're the student, you're not an expert.
But it's also not always easy, right? What would you recommend, for example, if you have children, if someone is listening and has children and wants to apply to really help, to develop a certain creativity, right? What would you recommend doing?
I have a great answer, because I used my father, now I'm going to use my mother. So when I had children late in life when I was over 40 years old, so I was already a creativity expert. And I said to my mom, I know creativity, but I don't know children. You're a teacher, you've seen 100,000 kids. How do I raise creative children? And my mother is a Montessori teacher. So she said this: whenever your child asks you a question, don't give the answer. Parents love to give the answer. So don't give the answer. You said, it doesn't matter what it is. They can say, Dad, where's my bag? And most parents will say, it's in your room under your bed. No. You say, where do you think it is? Or, why is the moon round? Don't give the answer. Just say, what do you think? Because now you're teaching your child that creativity is not asking questions. Creativity is asking questions and finding the answer. And by always giving the answer, we take that away from our children. And now there are just people going around asking questions, asking for answers from other people. And the bonus effect is that sometimes the answer from your child will be better than the one you were going to give, most of the time. Now, after you've listened to your child's answer, you say your answer. Now you're still teaching your child. You just held off for 30 seconds. It's such a good advice. The best advice I've ever, best parent, and I use it on my children. It's so difficult to do. And I feel, if you don't mind, I'm going to because I love Montessori as a concept, because Montessori is like this. I don't know if you're like, for example, let's say the teacher wants to teach dinosaurs to the kids. A normal teacher would say, children, today we're going to learn about dinosaurs. Here's a book, read about dinosaurs. A Montessori teacher will say in her head, today I want to teach the children about dinosaurs. And then it goes to the child and says, what would you like to do today? And the child will say, I want to draw. And the teacher will say, great, let's draw. Why don't we draw dinosaurs? Or the child says, I want to read. Teacher says, great idea. Here's a book about dinosaurs. Why don't you read it? You see the difference?
Brilliant.
Brilliant. But also extremely effective and So try it on your children.
You know, when you look at the environment, that especially young children, but also adults, I mean, you know, your book is not for children, but in terms of adults, how to really forge and harness creativity for ourselves and really to the world. Today with generative AI, it becomes harder and harder because you literally can just look up the answers, right? So where do you think are the pitfalls in order for us to really forge and develop this creativity in us?
You're right. If we use AI as a way of not having to think, it is bad. But for example, the calculator, you could argue that the calculator was the first AI tool. And if we use the calculator to not think about math, it actually, you could argue technically, maybe it wasn't so smart. But we don't, and some people do that, but some people use the calculator to do math they couldn't possibly have done otherwise. And that's how we should use all AI. That should be the approach. So I think AI is an amazing creativity tool. You should use it as that. Whenever if you have an idea, you should brainstorm with your AI. I have an identical twin brother. So when I was growing up, whenever I had an idea, I could brainstorm with him. Like if I would brainstorm with you, your brain is not like mine, which means you might not understand what I'm saying and might not really work. Or you can brainstorm in your head by yourself quietly and writing it down. But with AI, you can tell the AI to be you. You can upload all your written information, everything you've done, and then you can say, play the role of me back to me. And now you can brainstorm with yourself out loud and have yourself come back with ideas. It's an amazing new way of going through your thoughts. Now you're using AI as a creativity tool. It's a great way of doing it. Or you can ask the AI to take the role of Elon Musk or Leonardo da Vinci or anyone else. And now you can brainstorm with them. It's a great, you should use it, or you can ask it to help you ask questions about that you need to answer. What do you call it? Probe AI to be your creativity challenger, not to come up with ideas for you.
That's brilliant. So walk us a little bit through the different kinds of creative minds that you really encountered throughout your 20 plus years.
Well, as the creativity explorer, I used to be I used to see myself as a creativity expert, and then I reframed it to creativity explorer, and I did that to broaden my view on the concept. So I interview heads of state, CEOs, heads of innovation, but I also interview, I don't know, a taxi driver, a sushi chef. I don't know. I went to Mongolia, interviewed the nomads of Mongolia. What can we learn about creativity from you? So I want to understand human creativity from all aspects, all cultures, all languages, all professions. I want to understand every aspect of it. And when you approach a topic like that, you get a human understanding of what creativity is. So and you see unlimited versions of creativity.
Why do we need to understand creativity in order for us to master it? Because that's a very important and bold point that you're making as well. We really have to understand in order for us to master something. Explain.
Well, it's easy. In the book, I start the book by saying you cannot master that which you don't understand. So if you want to master creativity, you have to understand the creative process. And most people don't fully understand the creative process. So the book is very much about understanding how the creative process works and different versions of the creative process. I do the analogy of food. If you really want to understand food, a chef would go around the world and look at how different cultures approach food and now get a much broader understanding of what food is than if you only study food in your country. And the whole idea of this book is 37 countries, 37 insights about creativity from 37 different places in the world, is to get you the same. Oh, that's how they look at creativity in Thailand, I don't know, Germany, in Sweden. And now you get a much broader understanding of what creativity can be. And sometimes you will totally disagree. And sometimes you say, oh, wow, I never thought about creativity like that.
What is some concept or some way of thinking about creativity that really surprised you and that you really said, like, that's actually not the way I have thought about it?
Well, in the way you could say all 37 chapters are somehow made me think about creativity. But I'll give you an example. I went to Bhutan and I interviewed the former Minister of Tourism of Bhutan about, well, how do you look at creativity? Because they're Buddhist. And Bhutan is a country that almost no one's been to. No one knows anything about it except the happiness index. So I wanted to understand, how do they look at creativity? And he said, I think this is really smart. He said, you guys in the West, you think creativity is about expressing yourself, like self-expression. You're showing who you are. You're creating something for the world. You want people to see what you're creating. For you, it's an outward moment. You're showing off yourself. He said, there's nothing wrong with that, but that is a byproduct of creativity. The true meaning of creativity is to go deeper inside of yourself. Creativity, he said, is to better understand who you really are. And that is a profoundly different way of looking at creativity. And if you think about it, you probably haven't done anything meaningful from a creativity point of view unless you also learn something about yourself in the process, right? And more importantly, if creativity is about understanding yourself, it doesn't matter if you fail. Let's say you're a painter and you paint a painting that is utterly, totally disgusting and ugly at the end. It's not what you wanted. If you look at it as self-expression, you'd say, I'll throw that one away. If you look at it as self-understanding, you can say, what did I learn from painting this painting? Right? You didn't fail. You learned something about painting. If nothing else, you learned how to not paint that painting. It goes back to that Einstein quote. I learned 999 ways of not doing a light bulb, right? And if you don't learn something about yourself when you're doing something, I think you should question if that even is a creative project you're doing.
What does it give you to explore creativity at the personal level?
You mean me?
Yeah, what does it give you?
More than anything, it gives me inspiration. I mean, creativity is my passion, and by learning new things about this concept of creativity, I broaden my understanding of a topic that I'm extremely interested in or curious about. So yeah, I get inspired.
What and how do you look at life when you think about creativity?
That's a big question, but I look at it as a way of improving your life. Like I said in the beginning, first of all, creativity makes us happy. So the more creative things you do, the happier you will be. And second of all, the more you use creativity to approach your problems, the more problems will go away. Of course, new problems will come, but then you can solve them too. And it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Actually, creativity is more important for the poor, because if you have money, you can always solve anything with just buying the solution. If you're poor and uncreative, you will suffer way more than if you're poor and creative. So the potential for creativity is actually bigger for the ones without the resources.
What are some of the problems that you're still working on and that you really try to solve with your incredible, mind and creativity?
Okay, first of all, just because I study creativity doesn't make me a super creative person. I like to do the analogy. If I have written 10 books about football, am I a good football player? No, not necessarily. I understand football, but I'm not necessarily good at football. I have studied creativity for 25 years. I've interviewed thousands of people. Does it make me a creative person? No. It makes me very knowledgeable about the concept of creativity. But am I more creative today than I was 25 years ago? Of course, because I've learned something. But I wouldn't rank myself as some of the most creative persons on the planet. Absolutely not. But I am definitely one of the most interested people in creativity on the planet. Different aspect there. But to answer your question, how do I use my creativity? As I said before, I use my creativity to try to build the life I want to live. And a lot of people miss that. They use creativity to, learn how to paint or play music or sound like expressing yourself somehow. But you should use your creativity more than anything else to build the life you want. That, to me, that's the main purpose of creativity, which could be, like I said, like in my case, retiring for a few years. That's to me one of the most creative projects I've done. and to question. Like a lot of people, they go for the same jobs like their parents had. They think you have to work like this. Americans don't take vacation because no American takes vacation. I say, no. If you want vacation, you should make sure you have a work where you have vacation. If you want maternity leave, you should start working for a Swedish company in America so that you get maternity leave. Like, you need to question what you want, and then you need to create solutions for getting that, and you will have a much better life.
Tell us a little bit about you and about you buying an island just next to Stockholm. What initiated that? What made you buy an island, and who buys an island? Just, and in relation to your creativity, because I think it ties nicely together. So walk us a little bit through the process.
Well, actually, first of all, I own 2 islands next to. I own 2 of the 10 most central islands in Stockholm. Just, I actually used to own 3 islands. I'm a huge island fan, but now my wife said we can only have 2. So now it's a very good example, actually. First of all, people say, "Oh, not everyone can buy an island." I say everyone who wants to have an island can buy an island, and some islands are dirt cheap to buy if you live in Sweden. Not the one I bought because it's very close to Stockholm. But Sweden has 265,000 islands. So if you want an island, move to Sweden. And that just shows that most people say, I would love to have an island, but it's impossible to have an island. No, it's not. It's totally possible. If that's really what you want, you just move to Sweden and buy one, and it will cost you less than an apartment. Not mine, but less, some of them. Now, I woke up in November, I was 31 years old. I woke up in November 1999, and I said to myself, I'm going to own an island. Out of nowhere, the idea just popped into my head. Now, in November, no one looks for islands in November because it's snowing cold, and more importantly, no one sells island in November because there are no leaves on the trees and the island looks boring. So if you sell an island, you sell it in the summer. But I said to myself, I'm going to buy an island. And I went onto the internet and I found an island for sale in November. And I called the broker and I said, I want to look at the island. And he says, you're the only one who has called. Let's go and look at it. And he was cold. He was wearing the wrong shoes. He hated going out on that island. We had to rent the boat because no one has a boat in the water. And I fell in love. I said, that's the one. I'm going to buy this. In the taxi going back, he says to me, I think you can lower the price down to this. And the broker was on my side because he didn't want to go out one more time. So I got it dirt cheap, much lower than the market value. If the guy had only waited 6 months, he would have gotten much more money. So why did he sell it in November? Because he hated Swedish taxes. And in Sweden, we pay property tax in December. And he had just gotten the bill and he goes, I'm not paying this tax in 1 more year. So the only rule was I had to buy the island before the 31st of December. And I bought it on the 30th of December. But I saved so much money. Actually, the other island I owned, I also bought it in November. I bought both of my islands because I woke up in the middle of the night saying, I'm going to buy an island. I don't care if it's November. So the lesson here is just because everyone thinks you buy islands in the summer, and most of them do, doesn't mean that there's an opportunity to not do that. And that's the perfect example of grasping opportunities.
Absolutely, but it's also very funny that you say that you are actually not very creative, but the way you live and the way especially your decision-making process is very creative, right? In the sense that, yes, you had this idea, somehow it popped into your head and you knew, okay, let's act on it. So what do you think?
I'm not saying I'm not creative. I'm just saying, for example, if you ask me to cook, I'm like, I'm terrible. I'll do the most basic and most boring dish most of the time because cooking food doesn't inspire me. It's like, to me, food is something that I hope someone else will cook for me. I don't get inspired. It's not a creative endeavor for me. It's a practical routine, and I don't like practical routines. But my wife, cooking, she does super creative cooking. I'm very happy for that, but I'm not going to help.
No, that's really incredible. But walk us a little bit through the process where you really acquired this ability. You touched on it, of course. It was also, your family, like you were born into a very creative, family, but still, the execution process I find is very important, because I think one of the best skills that you can really acquire is making decisions,
Mm.
and that's a real skill. It's not something that you just come up with. That involves so many elements actually, and you can quantify it to some extent,
Mm.
in order to get better. So what do you think? Because when you look back, did you make any poor decisions as well? Because here you're really talking about two brilliant decisions you made, very smart, but did you also do possibly some decisions that were not very creative? Or to what do you make it responsible that you think it didn't come out as you wished?
But here's the thing that a lot of people misunderstand, that not doing something is also a decision, right? And a lot of people will not act. You could have, if you think I'm going to buy an island and you don't decide to go and look if someone is for sale or not, then that's also a decision. You decided not to do that, right? But so just how much, what do I lose by just acting on that impulse? It took me 5 minutes to check if there was an island for sale. I wasted 5 hours of my life, right? But, oh no, 5 minutes of my life. And I found it in 5 minutes. So not acting is also a decision, and a lot of people decide not to act, and that can also mean a failure. For example, I hate to use this as an example, but use Bitcoin. The first time I heard about Bitcoin, I think it was like $10, right? And I said to myself, I should buy some Bitcoin. This is going to be big, but I never did it, right? I wish I would have done it. I never did. And then it was 100. I said, oh, I should have bought. Then it was 1,000. I was, oh, now it's too late, right? It was not too late. I still think it's a scam. I hope it just drops off the cliff and just disappears again, because I don't understand it fundamentally. It seems to me like a scam, like those tulip bulbs in Holland. I'm sure people are going to get angry at me now. I'm sure it's a brilliant idea. I just never got it. But deciding not to do that was also a decision. And I always think that if the decision you decide not to do is probably, you're going to regret much more than the decisions you did decide to take. At least you tried, right? I remember I heard, I don't know if this is true, probably not true, but I heard that there are people working with really old people in, like, all what do you call it? At almost an old people's home, like dementia
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
And they said there's two kind of old people in those homes. Some are just happy, the most happy people you can work with, and the other ones are just bitter and angry. And the theory is that the bitter and angry ones are the ones that had a decision, they somewhere, like an important decision in life, and they never acted on it. Like, I should have proposed to her even though she was married. I should have quit my job earlier, but they never did. And now they realize they're going to die and it's too late. I don't know if that's true or not, but I act as if it is true. So in 2005, no, earlier in the end of 1990 or early 2000s, I had decided, all my life actually, I had this idea I want to live in Asia. But in 2005, I was like in my 30s, and I was getting ready to get married and just settle down. And I realized, shit, I was living in Sweden. I said, shit, this idea of living in Asia, it's disappearing. It's not going to happen. I don't want to be bitter that I never tried it. So I broke up from a wonderful relationship, and I told her, sorry, I can't do it. I quit everything. I had a great career in Sweden, and I just said, you know what? I drop everything. I need to move to China. I need to try it out. I can try for 6 months. I called it, I need to get the dragon out of me. And after 6 months, if I don't like it, I can go back, and at least I know I tried. I stayed in Asia for 18 years. I absolutely loved it. And I know in my core that if I hadn't done that and spent my rest of my life in Sweden at 57 now, I would be angry and bitter that I never tried. So deciding not to do something is much more dangerous than deciding to do it.
That's very powerful. What attracted you towards Asia? What do you think?
I have
Is
no idea what it is. I have no idea what it is. It's one of those things where I don't know, previous life, I don't know. I just feel so at home there. And I just like I love the energy of Asia. So, and I still go back a lot.
Are you spiritual or religion? So if you don't mind, I'm just
I
curious.
don't know. I am the pure definition of an agnostic. Atheists don't believe, believers believe. Agnostics says, I don't know, so let's see. I am totally of the conviction that there's so many aspects of the universe we still don't understand. Just look at how wrong we've been historically about how the universe works. Of course we are wrong. 99% of everything we assume is true is going to turn out to be wrong. I'm absolutely convinced that no, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it turns out that there is a soul. We just haven't been able to measure it yet. It sounds totally logical to me that soul could probably travel in time, but I don't know. I'm just going to, I approach this whole aspect as, I think agnostic is the most beautiful version of the three, because you're open to the possibility that there is something, but you don't know what it is. That is great. So if I die and it turns out there is a heaven, oh, I'm going to be so happy. If I die and it turns out there is nothing, I'm going to be equally happy.
Do you think this is a great vessel as well to really unleash your personal creativity, not just for you, but potentially for everyone if you are an agnostic?
I think agnostic combined with curiosity is the approach to anything. Because agnostic, if you just say agnostic, I don't know, that's ignorance. But if you have agnostic and curious, you say, I don't know, but I'm curious to find out, right? So to explore means to venture into unknown territory in order to learn more about it. Like, I don't know what the world looks like, but I'm going to explore it. But that takes curiosity. If you don't have the curiosity, then you just say, I don't know what the world looks like and I don't want to know. So it's important. The curiosity and the agnostic together is a great mix. You need both.
It's the middle way. I think that's really important. How can leaders really help to unleash the creative process for individuals, but also companies within? Because as you also mentioned, is that a lot of people, they say, yes, they do a lot in order for workers to be creative at work, but it doesn't necessarily translate to the employees.
Yes. No, and most companies do not do enough, first of all. And second of all, I would like to say that it is not the job of the company to make sure that the people are creative. It is the job of the employees. It's the job. Your creativity is not someone else's responsibility. It is your responsibility. If you ask people, do you think your company is doing enough to develop your creativity? Most people say no. Almost everyone says no. But if you ask the second question, do you think you are doing enough to develop your creativity? Almost everyone also says no. I'm not doing enough. So it's kind of like blaming school for your children's lack of creativity. It's the parents are in charge of developing the creativity of your kids, or even the kids are. So your job is to be in charge of your own creativity. If no one else is doing it, your job is to make sure you do. Can companies help? Of course companies can help. One of the best examples I've heard is I interviewed the head of customer experience of Lux Resorts in the Maldives. And his job is to understand what's the latest trends in hotels, right? So he travels around the world to look at the latest trends. And then he sends pictures home to his staff on this island in the Maldives. But he said, sometimes I can overwhelm them. I send so many pictures. I'm over-inspiring them. So he talked about creative respiration, not creative inspiration. Inspiration means to breathe in, like that. Respiration is what happens after you have been breathing in. It's what's happened in your lungs. So if you want to, as a boss, don't inspire them. Instead, respire them, meaning get them to... respiration means inspiration that makes you act. So inspire them in a way that makes them act, not just be inspired. That's the big difference. And he said by doing that, he would not send all the trends to them. He would send a select number of trends, and then he would go back and make, and see which of these pictures did you get inspired by? And it's, I really like that drink that was on fire. And then we go, okay, why don't we try to make versions of that? And then which one should we introduce? And then make sure that thing that inspired the staff actually turned out to a practical thing on the resort. See the difference? That's respiration. Otherwise, you just get too many fun pictures around the world. Nothing happens on the resort.
today there is so overwhelming information and distractions, right? And Rousseau, for example, he mentioned in his book in Emile, he mentioned that actually scarcity, and I paraphrase, ultimately breeds creativity, because you don't have to be creative, for example, if you have everything, right? So how does this translate into being creative? Do you think like the environment that we now grow up in the West, especially because we have so many things, you know, that we are to some extent almost like overwhelmed, and we don't even know where to start because we have to make a decision?
No, I don't agree at all. I don't agree at all. First of all, it's very dangerous to define, oh, we in the West, we have almost everything. It's like, no, we don't. 100 years from now, they're going to look back at us and say, those poor, unhealthy, unhappy bastards, right? There's no way on earth, not even Norway, the happiest and richest country in the world, Norway have so many problems left to solve. The biggest mistake we did was to say that we are living in a developed world, because it made us think we were more or less done. We are not a developed world. We are an utterly underdeveloped world, and we could do so much better from a sustainable point of view, from an economical point of view, from a happiness point of view. And we should aim for that. We should think about, let's assume we have reached 1% of our potential as a society. How do we reach 100? That should be our goal. And as a society, the West has failed by thinking we are more or less done. It's first of all wrong, and second of all dangerous. So I don't agree with that concept at all. Second of all, having a lot of different things doesn't make you less creative. It gives you the potential to be more creative, because creativity is to combine things. Think about it as a chef. If you have 3 ingredients, yes, you have to be very creative to cook something with those 3 ingredients. But if you have all the ingredients in the world and you have creativity and curiosity, you can create a way more wonderful dish with those ingredients. So having a lot of ingredients doesn't make you a bad cook. It gives you the potential to be a much better cook.
But do you think it can also be a challenge for people because there is so many things, because ultimately there is also, you have to make decisions, right? And
Yeah.
decisions are always based on information, and so you have to cut off. And so it involves, because I remember back when I was in primary school, I spent almost like 5 minutes. I stared at my closet, okay, and to think what I should actually wear, because I had met too many choices. So now I understand why some people actually, you know, they go back to the basics, because it takes time, it takes energy.
Yes, it does. But you could argue, is deciding what to wear. Let's say you have a huge wardrobe and you spend a lot of time deciding what to wear. Is that a good time spent of your creative life? For you, maybe not. For someone who loves clothes, maybe that's the best part of their day. And most likely, the more clothes you have, the more important that part of your day is, right? What's the name of that beautiful 98-year-old lady who just died? It's like a fashion icon in New York, and it has like hundreds of different jewelry. And every day she would wake up and she would dress, the most amazing outfit at 98 and go out into New York. And people loved her, and she was so happy. So it doesn't mean, but you have a point. The word decision literally means decision. It means to cut away. Like you cut something away. So decision means, what are you choosing not to do, right? That's what it means. And that's why some people decide, I'm just going to have a black t-shirt and jeans, so I don't have to think about what to wear, so I can use my creative energy somewhere else. Some other people are going to say, I'm not going to cook. I'm just going to eat in restaurants, so I can spend my creative energy choosing what to wear. So yes, creativity is deciding where to put your energy. The problem is most people don't do that, which means they don't channel their energy in the right way.
What's the one decision that you write about and that you think is the most pertinent in the world of creativity to become more creative in your day-to-day life, especially in making decisions?
Okay, the chapter from the Philippines, because my wife is from the Philippines, so I spend a lot of time there, and I love their approach to life in the Philippines. And I was trying to understand, why are the Filipinos so happy, even though a lot of them are very poor. And I wanted to understand why. And I interviewed a lot of Filipinos, and what the word that came back was resilience. And again, what does resilience mean? The etymology of the word, it means to bounce back, not to come back, to bounce like a spring, ting, like that, bouncing back. And someone said to me, like, he was growing up, and during my mother's and grandmother's time, she was occupied by the Japanese, but she never spoke anything negative about that time. She would only speak positive stories about the Japanese occupation, not about the Japanese, but the positive things that they were still able to do, even though they were occupied by the terrible Japanese. Now, if you only hear those stories, you hear the positive side of something. So when you fail, you say, well, because resilience means that when you fail, you decide to bounce back. A creative person who, you say you shouldn't be afraid to fail. That's the wrong approach. You hear that all the time from CEOs. We are not afraid to fail in this company. Creative people are not afraid to fail. That's not the correct observation. Creative people are not afraid to bounce back after failure. That's the observation. They might be afraid to fail. That's not the point. The point is they're able to bounce back after their failure. So, I'll give you an example. I wrote a book, which is a novel. It's called The Invisible, published by Penguin. It became #1 on Amazon of all books in the world. Well, I beat the Bible and I beat every book. I was #1. I was like, wow, I made it as an author. That's very hard to get. It was #1 for a week. Then it dropped, and then it never became a bestseller. As an author, I could look at that and say, I failed as an author. I had the potential to have a huge bestseller and it never happened. Or I can say to myself, I was #1 on Amazon of all books, 15 million books, I was #1, right? That's the story I tell myself so that I can publish my next book. So if I can do it again, then maybe next time I can keep the momentum up and going. If I tell me the negative story, I'm not going to go and write the second book. I will tell myself the story of failure. I tell myself the story of success, or the story of bouncing back.
It's beautiful. Also, my godmother, she's also from the Philippines and her family, and I can truly attest to this. These are incredible people. I never have seen, those kind of just positive-minded, resilient people, incredible people, and just so genuine. It's
Yes.
outstanding. So good for you. Last question: what makes you truly feel alive?
Okay, my first answer was going to be children, but that's too obvious. My second answer would be being creative. That seems too in line with what we've been talking about. So I'll say my third answer was meeting unexpected people. So when I get to interview someone, I once heard the Swedish princess of Victoria was asked by a journalist, what do you do at all these dinners sitting next to some boring old man? Don't you get tired of all these dinners? And Victoria said, my mother, the queen, told me when I was very young, everyone has an interesting story. Your job is to find that story. And I think it's a brilliant advice. Of course, it's easier for Victoria because the person next to her is most likely a Nobel Prize winner or something. But the more I interview people about creativity, the more I realize it doesn't matter who it is. I can have a taxi driver in Singapore and I can start talking to him about how are you creative as a taxi driver in Singapore, and I will always get an interesting answer.
Beautiful. Fredrik Haren, thank you so much for being truly a blessing to myself and really to the world.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversation.
Fredrik Haren. That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.the-ykm.com.